I wanted to welcome everyone to this webinar tonight. It is going to be the ninth of our presentations for the Rappaport Summer Fellowship, and it's our last one. So we're really excited to welcome all of you who are here tonight. My name is Amanda Teo. I am the Executive Director for the Rappaport Center for Law and Public Policy here at BC Law School. I wanted to give folks a chance to introduce themselves, who are going to be our panelists tonight. I'm going to start first with Alexis, who is our Administrative Assistant for the Center.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I am the admin assistant for the center. My background is in philosophy, so in the humanities, and thank you all for being here.
Fantastic. Before I turn it over to Emily and Emma, I just wanted to share a few things about myself. Again, my name is Amanda Teo. I am the Executive Director of the Rappaport Center, and I've been the Executive Director since January of this year. Prior to becoming the ED of this center, I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, first as counsel to the United States Attorney and also as an Assistant United States Attorney in the Civil Rights Division. In that role, I advised the office on cross-functional initiatives, including matters involving policy, criminal legal reform, and hiring and recruiting. And in my role as an AUSA, I primarily investigated patterns and practices of law enforcement who were violating their constituents' civil rights. Before that, I was an appellate prosecutor for about 10 years at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, where I was also the chief of staff for a number of years. And I started my career as an academic, first in a PhD program in the humanities, and then later as a JD PhD. So I'm really, really excited to now be in a position where I can mentor law students and hopefully help them be a lot more intentional in their career planning than I was when I was a law student. With that in mind, I want to introduce you to two of our Rappaport Fellowship alumni who are actually doing this in a much more planful and intentional way than I did. Um, and so I'm hoping Emily and Emma, you might each be able to just say something quick about yourselves and say hello to everybody who's on this webinar. Emily, you want to start first?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily, and yes, I go to Suffolk University, and I was with the City of Boston Law Department this past summer, and I'm very excited to be able to yap with you all tonight about our experience.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emma. I'm a current 2L at Boston University School of Law. I have a background in public health and health policy that I was super excited to bring to the Rappaport Fellowship, and I'm really excited to chat about that and many other things with you tonight.
Thanks, Emily and Emma. All right, so a little bit about the center before we talk about the fellowship itself. So we are actually housed at BC Law School, but we serve all 8 of the ABA-accredited law schools in New England. We are endowed by the Phyllis and Jerome Rappaport Foundation. And the Rappaport Foundation has a number of philanthropic holdings, but the ones that are most relevant to law students are threefold. The first is the Rappaport Forum over at Harvard Law School. The second is the Rappaport Institute for Greater Boston, which is housed over at the Harvard Kennedy School. And the K-School program and our program here at BC Law, we actually interact quite a bit with one another. And the most meaningful way in which we interact is that over the course of the summer, our summer fellows do a lot of our work together. So when you join our cohort as a Rappaport Fellow, you get a chance to join not just your 12, the 12 legal fellows in your cohort, but also 20 policy fellows who are also doing similar work in state and local government. But they have trainings, they have training in, in the policy world. They might be MDs, MBAs, MPPs, MPHs. They're basically doing this work, but in spaces other than law schools. The mission for the Rappaport Center is inspiring and sustaining and improving leadership in state and local law and public policy. And we do that through supporting emerging leaders, fostering collaboration and dialogue, and advancing policy as the bridge between our ideals and our reality. I just want to pause to say that this webinar is completely for you tonight. So we're really eager to hear questions from those of you who are listening. I think our panelists are probably in the best position to give you advice. And so please don't be shy. Use the chat to ask anything you might want to ask. I'm going to be talking about about the 3 different buckets of our fellowship. And then I'm also going to be talking about our application process. Through each of those different components, I'm going to ask Emily and Emma to share their insights, but it would be helpful for you to also share with us what questions you might have and direct Emily and Emma as to where you might want to hear more. All right, so before we go to the fellowship, the work here at the fellowship at the Rappaport Center falls into 3 primary groups. The first is that we have a speakers series. We have about 140 convenings since 2015, so about 10 to 12 a year. And we just wrapped up a really great program on health policy. And we are taking a little bit of a hiatus until the start of the next semester, but please join us either here in person at BC Law, where we serve a great lunch, or on Zoom. Our panels are always hybrid. The second thing we do is we host visiting professors and senior fellows. Our senior fellow for the fall was Carol Rose, who is the executive director of the ACLU of Massachusetts. Our senior fellow for the spring, you're hearing it here first, is Danielle Sered, who is the executive director of Common Justice. She is a leading voice in restorative justice, and she's based out of New York, and she'll be here in February. And then, of course, we have the summer fellowship, which is what we're here to talk about. The purpose of the fellowship, when it was designed by Jerry Rappaport, was threefold. He really wanted to make sure that we are promoting young people and emerging leaders to become a part of a collective effort to achieve a public good. He wanted to make sure that we have spaces where we're nurturing young leaders' ability to see things from another person's perspective. In other words, to listen and to speak across difference. And then lastly, he wanted to make sure that we build a model in which if emerging leaders, or actually very practiced leaders, have a really great idea, that they have a network of folks that they can turn to help facilitate the implementation of those ideas, and to gather together to serve the public good. So what the fellowship looks like is 4 different components. The first is a $10,000 stipend to enable you to intern and to focus on your professional growth over the summer. The second is having an immersive legal experience. That's an internship in a state or a local government agency. Third is an experiential learning program where we have weekly sessions with leaders and institutions that are driving change. And then the last piece is a mentorship and networking component, which is a way for you to connect with seasoned practitioners who can serve as mentors and give you advice. So, I think there are lots of different ways for you to be funded for great, impactful public interest work over the summer. So while I know that the $10,000 stipend is an important part of that, it's really not what makes this fellowship unique. And so I'm going to be spending the bulk of our webinar today talking about the 3 other components of our fellowship program. All right, so first I'm going to start talking about the internship program. This is 10 weeks where you are going to be placed in a state or local government agency, and the goal of this is to make sure that you have the chance to apply the legal knowledge that you have, that you're developing in the classroom to a real world set of problems. If you were like me when I was a 1L, I came in with a lot of excitement about actually making real change in the world and connecting my legal education to impact. And then all of a sudden, by like October and November, I was, listening to stories about, clocks falling on people at train stations and folks with hairy hands. And I was not at all sure about like how I landed here and how any of the stuff that I was doing in the classroom was connected to what I hope to be doing in the real world. So the idea of this internship program is to bridge that, to really connect the things that you're learning, in your doctrinal classes to things that are happening in the real world. It's really also to help connect you with stakeholders who are already making a meaningful difference, and then it's to give you a chance to be in the room and at the table for really meaningful conversations and policy changes. This internship program is going to be putting you in a state or local government agency. And I want to pause for a minute to talk about why that is such a unique opportunity, particularly at this moment in time. State and local government is just where impactful policy making is happening right now. Whether or not you agree with the Trump administration's policies, what is happening is really a shift from for policymaking to be happening from a federal space to a state or local space. And that's really the ethos of the administration. And that's also what's happening just because of the chaos that's happening in DC. And so this is an opportunity for states and localities to be leaning in and filling in some of the gaps that are left by the federal government. And it happens to be that Massachusetts and Boston are the two governments that are really in good position and looked to as exemplars for this kind of work. We happen to have two governments and actually a variety of municipal governments here in Massachusetts that are doing cutting edge, responsive, functional, and creative work. In addition to that, and I just want to pause there to say that means that even if you are not planning on staying in Massachusetts for your long-term career, doing a state and local internship here during your 1L or 2L summer is going to give you a set of skills that are going to be really applicable to whatever you choose to do in the future. And that like working in the government in Massachusetts or greater Boston area is going to give you some skill sets that are going to be really applicable wherever you go. And I think other states and other types of government agencies are going to be really interested in what you learned here, whether or not you choose to stay here in the future. And then the last piece I want to emphasize is that, as somebody who's done work both in the federal government and in local spaces, state governments and local governments just have leaner teams and less bureaucracy and more efficiency. And that's great if you are the type of person that I am, which is like I'm really impatient to sort of like get going and to make a difference. When I was working for the DOJ, I'd often find myself like spending a lot of time memoing up an idea and sending it to DC and hoping that I was going to hear back from them about whether I could implement anything from something around criminal legal reform to even like just recruiting or onboarding our employees at the U.S. Attorney's Office differently. All of those required permission from DC. But what's great about being here in local government is that you're really like getting face time with the people who can actually make real decisions. And that allows you to go from ideation to operation really, really quickly. And that's particularly helpful for interns because you're only going to be there for 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks. The ability to actually get in and operationalize something quickly, to be in on the ground floor and then to get to see a process through is really, really helpful. So I also want to talk about like what do our fellows actually do? And so for that, I wanted to talk to Emily and Emma. Could you share with us like one project that was the highlight of your summer, knowing that you worked on a variety of different things? Emily, you were over at the City of Boston's Law Department. What was one project that you really enjoyed this summer?
For me personally, I entered this fellowship with an interest in criminal law. And so even though with the city it was all purely civil work, one thing that I got to look over was an ordinance that would pretty much solidify the Office of Returning Citizens kind of function in the state government at this time. They are a unit that's not necessarily, I guess the best word would be codified. And so given the current state of the government and such, certain offices, such as the Office of Returning Citizens, are at risk of being disbanded or kind of essentially removed. And so I was able to review an ordinance that would essentially prevent that from happening. And so that was something deeply that I'm personally deeply passionate about. And so being able to get that inside look and assist with the preliminary approaches to that was very rewarding. And it was kind of nice to be able to know that I was trusted with looking at different ordinances and giving input on essentially codifying an office.
Thanks, Emily. What about you, Emma?
So I was over at the Massachusetts Division of Insurance, which does a lot of work mostly related to insurance policy. But one of the projects that I worked on towards the end of the summer was relating to how the division regulates private health insurance companies. And an unexpected part of that work was when, through that regulation process, we ended up going through a formal hearing with one of the health insurance companies, which hasn't happened in, I think, like 15 years. So that was something that was new to many people at the division. But I was able to contribute to some of the research that we ended up using in the final draft of the hearing and in our motions in the hearing. I think that was a really special and exciting opportunity for me because I didn't think that I would get that sort of traditional litigation experience. And not that we were in a formal courtroom, but being able to do that like back and forth kind of writing was something that helped me understand better about how litigation and policy work hand in hand.
Thanks, Emma. So our other fellows have done everything from reviewing legal determinations to reviewing draft legislation. Some of them who are 303 certified even got to brief and argue motions. And so there's a variety of different work that our interns can do. And the idea behind the summer internship experience is to really facilitate interns getting a variety of different understandings of what lawyers in public service can be doing. So let me talk a little bit about internship placements. In order to qualify for the Rappaport Fellowship, your internship placement has to fulfill two criteria. The first is that it has to be in a state or municipal agency in Massachusetts, so it can't be a nonprofit or a federal government position. And that placement has to be in a position focused on policy. And so I'm going to use the next slide to talk a little bit about what I mean by both of these requirements. So the first is obviously you got to be placed in a state or local government agency. So any municipal government agency, any state government agency, from the Attorney General's office to one of the state secretariats to the Massachusetts House. Any of those types of internships would qualify. There are also some placements that may qualify, but only if the position is focused on policy. So for example, every year I have folks who are interested in doing criminal legal work. And I'm excited for that as a former member of the Suffolk County DA's office. I love the idea of folks who want to go work for CPCS, which is the state's public defender office, or the DA's office. But if you're telling me if you would like to spend the summer actually in court each and every day, arraigning cases or defending cases in, like, for example, the Boston Municipal Court, the Rappaport Fellowship is probably not the best fellowship to support that work. But if you want to go to these agencies, I can work really intentionally with you and your supervisor to craft a position that would be policy oriented. So for instance, you could be placed in the Office of the General Counsel, or you might be placed with a team that does legislative work and advocacy, or maybe a training division with one of these offices. So if you're interested in doing that kind of work, we would just work together after you're selected to be part of the cohort to make sure that they're giving you a policy portfolio that would make sense. Even if, for instance, you were doing a little bit of in-court work or observation as well. And then there are some examples of placements that will not qualify no matter what. I love the U.S. Attorney's Office. I obviously also love, organizations like the Greater Boston Legal Services or Lawyers for Civil Rights, but none of those types of nonprofit placements would qualify for this fellowship. And then also, if you're interested in clerking for a judge, like doing a judicial internship, that is also an awesome opportunity, but one that cannot be funded by this fellowship. And I want to invite any of you to ask questions in the chat. Like if you have a question about what may or may not qualify, this is a great time to sort of pop in and ask a question about that. So in general, there are two ways to obtain an internship. You can either apply on your own or you can be placed by the Rappaport Center. And there are going to be certain positions that only the Rappaport Center can place you in. So for instance, the governor's legal counsel, if you wanted to work for GLOW, the only way to do that over the summer is going to be through a placement by the Rappaport Center. And then there are also certain offices that will reserve particular slots for Rappaport Fellows. So for example, the Attorney General's office will always hold 2 or 3 positions for our fellows. And we also have other offices such as BPS, Boston Public School, the Office of Legal Advisor for the Boston Public Schools, that will hold a position for our Rappaport Fellows as well. But no matter what, we always encourage folks to be applying independently. And I do that for a couple of reasons. First, no matter how awesome you are, we cannot guarantee that you're going to receive the Rappaport Fellowship for this summer. We operate on a cohort model, so we're selecting for 12 people who represent a variety of different experiences as well as schools. And so you might be a fantastic candidate, but maybe we don't have room for you in the cohort this year. So always be applying independently just to make sure you have options available. I also think applying independently helps you identify the right opportunities for you. Applications are formative, like not just summative, right? They give you a chance to really do a deep dive into an agency, maybe talk with some folks that are lawyers there to understand what their work is like. And in the process of actually like figuring out what the agency does and what the lawyers in those agencies do, you get a chance to discover who you are and what you want to do. And it also helps you express your interest in those agencies early. So even though, for example, the Attorney General's office always holds a few slots for Rappaport Fellows, if you can apply to them through the Mass Consortium process and identify early for them the teams that you're interested in, it would be a lot easier to get you into those placements than if we're kind of parachuting in after the fact and asking them to put you in a team where you haven't already interviewed or expressed your interest. But having said all of that, one of the unique features of the Rappaport Fellowship is the placement support. So once you're selected as a member of our cohort, we will sit down and meet and like actually really get to understand what your skill sets already are and what are the places in which you might want to do more growing, what are the gaps that you might have in your resume or skill set. And when we talk about that, we then get to discover together where you might be placed to help you just to develop some of those skills. So for instance, at the point in which you're offered a position in the cohort, we may talk about like, okay, so you've already paralegaled for the ACLU. Maybe you're looking to develop some legislative skill sets, or maybe you've already paralegaled at a public defender's office, but you're really interested in criminal legal policy. And so I might encourage you to actually to do your internship at the governor's legal counsel so that you can see criminal legal policy done at a different level from a different perspective. So one thing that we offer for the Rappaport Fellowship is really this kind of like bespoke, really customized, wraparound, supportive process by which we kind of discover together and co-create an opportunity that would be right for you. Okay, so before we go to the experiential learning program, I just want to invite any questions that folks on the webinar might have about the internship process. Please feel free to type it in the chat. If we don't catch your question now, you can feel free to ask it at the end as well. I see a hand raised. I think it might be easier. Nor, I see your hand. Are you able to type your question into the chat or actually unmute yourself and ask the question? I don't know what is possible under this webinar format. Say allowed to talk.
Hello.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
sorry, thank you so much. I just
No
wanted to let you
worries.
know that at least from my end it says the chat is disabled.
Oh no, thank you so much for
Yeah,
letting
of
us
course.
know. That means maybe that probably the best way of doing this is to have you type in the Q&A. Is the Q&A open by any chance?
Yes, the Q&A is open. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much for letting us know. All right, please feel free to use the Q&A for this. All right, so seeing no questions yet, I'm going to move on to the next portion of our fellowship, and then hopefully additional questions can be raised in the Q&A for later. Okay, so the next thing that makes this fellowship program really unique is the experiential learning program. And so each week, our Rappaport Fellows will will go to a public impact institution and meet with some seasoned leaders who are either Rappaport Fellows, maybe a member of our Rappaport Advisory Board, or just a leader in public policy here in Massachusetts. And the goals of this program are to introduce you to some of the major policy history and challenges and opportunities here in Massachusetts. We recognize that a lot of folks don't actually come from Massachusetts, that this might be new to you. And so this is an opportunity for you to really learn about the communities and be proximate to some of the stakeholders. All right. So the other reason for the experiential learning program is to connect you with the policymakers and the thought leaders and professionals who are doing this work. It's really lovely to have the opportunity to be in a small room with the Attorney General or with the mayor and get a chance in a really intimate setting to ask them questions about their career, about their decision making, and about their policies. And so this is really a unique opportunity to bring you face to face with a lot of leaders. And the last thing is to just get the cohort together for some learning and socializing and team building. Like we have a lot of fun during our experiential learning program. It's really nice to have an occasion to get together, both as our 12-person legal cohort, as well as sometimes in the bigger cohort with our policy fellows as well. So our programming depends on our fellows' interests from year to year. We almost always go to the Attorney General's office, to City Hall, to the State House. But beyond that, our programming changes depending on what folks are interested in. So we had a number of transportation nerds last summer, for example. So we went to the MBTA Control Center where we got to see them actually move around the buses and the trains. And that was really cool for somebody like me, who's kind of a big nerd around trains and automobiles and buses. We also had some big sports fans, so we were able to go to the Celtics Foundation last year. Sometimes we go to the Red Sox Foundation instead. And then it was also really unique to go to the Supreme Judicial Court and to get a chance to interact with the Chief Justice as well as with some of the justices of the Appeals Court as well. Emily, can you tell us what your favorite experiential learning program was and why?
I feel like as someone who's interested in crime, I should say CPCS, but it was actually the Celtics Foundation. As someone who grew up in Boston and loved the Celtics my entire life, it was awesome being able to just go to TD Garden, but also the Foundation Center, learn about the work that they do behind the scenes that isn't necessarily advertised. And then being able to kind of just walk on the floor in TD Garden and just getting that aerial view was really nice. Um, I also do just love basketball, so that was my favorite.
Thanks, Emily. And then I want to speak to the last part of the program, which is mentorship and networking. So every Rappaport Fellow is paired with two mentors. One mentor is usually a member of the Rappaport's advisory board, and the other mentor is a Rappaport alumni or somebody who is a very seasoned practitioner in an area of policy that you're passionate about. When we get together after you're selected to be a Rappaport Fellow, we talk about who have been your best mentors in the past? What are some of the questions that you might have around your career or professional and mix of professional and personal life that you were hoping that a mentor might be able to help you answer? And then we work together to identify the right mentors for every fellow. Um, the idea behind the mentorship program is in the short term, of course, to make sure that you're connected with two people in addition to myself who can give you advice about your educational, your professional development, to give you some networking opportunities and to offer you some alternative perspectives as well as emotional support. But really, in the long term, what we're hoping to do is to demystify the process of mentorship and networking. Um, I was a first generation law student. I really didn't have other lawyers that I could turn to ask questions about how to develop professionally. And I also kind of grew up with a kind of ethos of like relentless like individualism. I always thought that like I should be able to sort of do everything on my own. And that theory really worked well until probably my second job. Because at that point, I discovered that the way in which people get jobs is really not by applying cold, but really by leaning on their networks to kind of figure out what is a good fit for you professionally as well as for an organization. Um, and so, as somebody who was pretty introverted, I often like didn't know how to go about networking. It felt really awkward and like mercenary to me. And the great thing about the Rappaport networking program is that it actually, first of all, we're connecting you with mentors who have volunteered to interact with law students who really feel like they're invested in developing the next generation of leaders. So there's no awkwardness around like, does this person actually want to be interacting with me? These mentors are here because they want to be doing this for you. And then we also are creating spaces and opportunities for you to be developing really genuine relationships with these mentors. And so it takes that awkwardness of like, what am I supposed to say? How do I actually conduct myself in a mentorship situation? Is this going to feel awkward? Like, do I have to be asking for a job? It takes all of that awkwardness out of it because we're actually creating very intentionally opportunities for you to be interacting with these mentors. And at the end of the day, my goal is to make sure that each of you walk away from the summer having developed, having started to develop a personal board of advisors. My mentor in law school, Professor Lonnie Guinier, always said that the way in which we make sure that we're developing resiliency and a values-driven career is by having a personal board of advisors that we can lean on in order to make sure that like we're asking the right questions and holding ourselves accountable. And I certainly know coming from DOJ in the last couple of months that a lot of my colleagues have had to lean on one another to make some really complicated decisions about their careers. And I certainly have had to lean on those colleagues to make some really hard choices in my career as well. And so the idea is to make sure that you leave this summer with the beginnings of that personal board of advisors. So I wanted to show you just some of the folks that might be in this kind of mentorship and networking group. So we have over 300 law fellows and 400 policy fellows, having had this fellowship program in place for about 25 years. So there's a huge network of folks that you could be connected to. Our Rappaport alumni are going into a huge variety of pretty high impact careers. So we now have judges, assistant attorney generals, as well as, of course, the mayor of Boston herself, Michelle Wu. And then our advisory board members are serving the Commonwealth in a variety of different capacities. We have journalists, we have former governor's legal counsel. We have the chief counsel of CPCS. So lots and lots of folks who are covering a variety of different policy areas who are eager to be mentoring our fellows, our Rappaport fellows over the summer. Emma, can I ask you to talk about who your mentors were and what kind of relationships you might have developed with them over the course of your summer?
For sure. So, as Amanda has mentioned, each of us get two mentors. So my Rappaport Advisory Board member mentor was she's currently the general counsel at a like life sciences biotech company. That's a relationship that Amanda specifically picked out for me because she knows with my interest in health law generally. She also knows that I'm really curious about a lot of different career paths within kind of health law broadly. And so she wanted to, pick out somebody who would be able to provide that different perspective and kind of a different type of career than one that I had already considered. So that was a really helpful mentorship opportunity for me to kind of learn about something that I didn't know. What is it like to go in-house? Like, what does that mean? How do you get here? What do you do? Those are the kinds of questions that she was really able to answer and help me think about what maybe my next steps might be. My other mentor is currently at the Attorney General's office. I think she's been working for the AG for, if not over, at least close to 20 years now. And so she is within the healthcare division there, obviously very closely tied to my health interests. That was a mentorship opportunity that has kind of blossomed into a networking opportunity. I think by connecting me with that person, I was able to develop that relationship very organically through the Rappaport Fellowship. You're supposed to meet with your mentors several times over the course of the summer, and the fellowship makes it really easy to do that, both one-on-one and in kind of smaller group events as well. And so by getting to know each other sort of casually without the pressure of, needing a job or another opportunity, I was able to get to know this person in a really low stakes environment, and she was able to get to know me. Which became especially helpful because I have accepted a job next summer at the Attorney General's office, working potentially very closely with this person. So being able to get to know her through the Rappaport Fellowship helped me to ask questions about what's it like being at the AGO, what's it like being there for such a long period of time, that I think I wouldn't have felt so comfortable asking if we didn't already know each other very well. And I consider that to have been a really awesome perk of the program and of the mentorship in particular.
Thanks, Emma. Um, so those are the three components of the program. I want to give you a sense of what the timeline looks like for over the summer. We have an orientation in April. There's a welcome reception in May in which we get our fancy headshots done. The experiential learning programs tend to be Thursday afternoons, and then we have a big celebration dinner in July. The additional requirements for the program include some very short speaking opportunities. Each of our fellows do a blog post over the summer about one of the experiential learning opportunities. So if you want to get a sense of what some of those opportunities look like, I hope you will come to our webpage and look on the blog, and you'll get a sense of like where we went and who we met with and what types of questions these leaders answered for our fellowship cohort. There's also a final program evaluation and self-assessment over the summer that is as much for Alexis and me to make sure that we're constantly improving the fellowship, as it is also for each of the fellows to do a really good inventory of what they learned over the course of the summer that they didn't know at the beginning of the summer. And then a final piece of the requirement is just being an ambassador for the Rappaport Fellowship, the way Emily and Emma are doing tonight. All right, so let's talk about eligibility and selection. So what we're trying to do is to assemble a cohort of 12 law students. You should be in your first or second year of law school. So your 1L, if you are in your 1L or 2L year now, you can apply for the fellowship. And we want to select a cohort that represents diverse law schools, diverse lived educational and professional experiences, as well as diverse policy interests. So we're looking for students who have, first of all, a commitment to public service. We're looking for students who have enthusiasm specifically for policy as the way of making an impact for this particular summer. It might be that you might go on to do direct service or some other kind of work. But for this summer, we want you to be excited about trying out policy as a specific way of doing good in the world. We would like you to have demonstrated interest in one or two policy issues and to anchor that interest in your lived or educational or professional experience. And then we would want you to demonstrate some leadership potential. And every internship or every fellowship opportunity says we want to select people who have leadership potential, but we're looking for a particular kind of leader. We're looking for folks who can play a really good role in a team. You should know what kind of team member you are. We're looking for folks who have some degree of self-reflection and a real growth mindset. I think right now there are, if you're like me, 1L year was a time in which I was feeling like very uncertain about who I was. I had a lot more questions than I had answers about who I was going to be and how I was going to use my skill set to make an impact. And what I think is really important about this fellowship is that we're not looking for people who are fully formed. We are looking for people who have a growth mindset, who recognize like how they might learn and grow and specifically how they might use this fellowship as an opportunity to figure that out for themselves. And so, we want you to do a deep dive into or take inventory of what skills you already have, what questions you already have answered, but also have an understanding of what skill sets you haven't yet developed and what questions you haven't yet gotten an answer to. And then finally, we want folks who have the capacity to add value and to succeed in the legal workplace. And there are a variety of different ways in which you can demonstrate this. We want folks who can demonstrate that they're good thinkers, that they're analytical. We want folks who have initiative and curiosity. We definitely want clear and technically sound legal writing. And it would help for you to demonstrate that you have a strong academic and professional record. I want to pause there for a moment because I know right now is a time in which we have lots and lots of anxiety about what our transcripts might look like. And I want to assure you that your transcript from law school is just one piece of your application profile. And so if after the first semester of law school, your transcript doesn't look like what you imagined it should look like, that's okay. Please don't take yourself out of the running. If you need to show us that your transcript doesn't represent your best self or your best work, just think about how you might use the rest of your application to demonstrate that, right? Tell us, for example, one or two references who can talk about your engagement in the classroom or your capacity to do academic work outside of law school. There are a variety of different ways to show that you can be really excellent in a professional workspace. And so don't lean too hard on the transcript if it doesn't look the way you want it to look. Okay. Let's talk about the application process. So the application package is actually pretty simple. We're going to be asking for a resume of no more than 2 pages. We would like transcripts from law school and also from any program, undergraduate and after. So if you did some sort of master's or PhD program after undergraduate, please send us the transcripts for that as well. We'd like the names and contact information of 2 references, your choice, professional or academic, and we ask you to use that strategically, again, to give us a full profile of who you are and what your strengths are. And then finally, there's going to be an application essay, and it consists of 3 short essay questions. So let's say your transcripts are not ready by January 15th, which is our application deadline. Don't worry, you can always supplement your application with those when they come out. I want to talk a little bit about the short essay questions. We're really valuing concision for those essays because in the legal world, the ability to express yourself in a concise but fulsome way is really a skill set that's worth developing. And we also want to hear your own voice. So we're asking for no AI assistance for those short essay questions. A few tips. Um, Show, don't tell. I really do believe that you're really awesome, but it would be helpful to all of our interviewers and evaluators for you to give us some specific examples to illustrate why you're a great leader or why you're a great team member or collaborator. It would be very, very helpful if you can connect to the mission. Do a deep dive into our website, talk with fellows, alumni of the fellowship who have gone to your law school, who you know through other ways. You can always connect with Emily and Emma as well, so that you can show how your personal goals align with the Rappaport's mission and theory of change, and how our fellowship may be used to help you develop your skill set for this summer. We ask you to please avail yourself of your career services centers. Ask your trusted friends, your teachers, your advisors, your career services folks for a review of your application. And then, of course, please be careful because your application represents yourself, so you want to make sure that you have a good work product. The application actually opens on Monday, December 1st, and it closes on January 15th. The reason we open the application early, even though we have no expectations that anybody will be submitting anything until January, is to give you a lot of time to sort of think about the application process. So while you're studying for finals or while you're out over break, you can actually be percolating on some of the questions, and then you can also be getting help for those application essays early. Once we have reviewed the written submissions, we are going to be interviewing about 24 or 30 finalists. The interview process will take place at the end of January through early February. The process is going to be conducted virtually. We have 30-minute Zooms in which we have a 4-person panel that will be interviewing our finalists. The panels usually consist of myself and Alexis, as well as one Rappaport alum and one Rappaport advisory board member. What I want to share is that if you are invited for an interview, you will get a lot of support and some detailed instructions on how to present your best self. So you don't need to be anxious about the interview process now. But the one thing that I want to give you some caution about is that you are going to get pretty short notice for those interviews, probably 72 hours, because not because we're trying to be tricky, but because Alexis and I actually have to put together, possibly 30 panels of interviewers. And then finally, we aim to extend our invitations before Valentine's Day. And we do that pretty early to allow for you to respond to any outstanding offers of employment that you might have, and also to allow us to plan very intentionally to find you a job placement if you don't already have one, or to decide between a variety of job placements if you have multiple to consider. I want to pause here for a moment just to invite additional questions through the Q&A function. Please type your questions in the Q&A. But while you're doing that, I want to give Emily and Emma a chance to talk about what they thought made their application stand out. So, Emily, do you want to speak a little bit to why you thought you were selected for the fellowship program and what advice you might give to folks who are applying?
Yeah, I really think it was mostly my personal statement or cover letter that carried because I talked about a personal experience that I had related to criminal law, and the impacts or like the policy impacts or just the impacts of the current criminal justice system that I firsthand have seen. And the reason why I think that's what got me the interview was because I was explicitly asked about my statement, my personal experience in the interview, which, not gonna lie, did throw me off guard. I've never been actually asked about it, but it was a great opportunity to not only highlight why I was interested in criminal law, but also to expand more about how that personally led to or furthered my passion for the policy purposes. And I think that just goes into the idea that these essays are an opportunity for you to demonstrate why you're interested in policy, but to demonstrate who you are as a person. Um, when it comes to public interest and public policy, it's really about showing your passion, why you want to do the work. We all know it's not for the money. So, like, realistically, why are you applying? Why are you here? And what's your personal drive and focus for applying, but also just wanting to do this in the long run, as a career? That's very important. And that's not to say you need a specific policy area that you're interested in, but I do think that having that personal experience and highlighting it is what got me that interview. And I appreciated the opportunity to expand more on it as well.
Thanks, Emily. Emma, any pieces of advice for applicants?
Definitely. I'm glad you asked me this because I've been thinking about it. This was the first time that I had applied for something that I wanted this badly, which maybe says more about me, but what I mean that to say is that this is a really awesome fellowship and it's worth putting your best self into the application and to whatever you can do to kind of prepare to present that. So one of the things that I did is I practiced with my career services office. I did a practice interview. Um, I don't know, and Amanda can clarify if they'll be doing interviews the same way, but we got our questions ahead of time. Is that going to be the same, Amanda?
Yeah, well, I get you didn't get the specific questions, but you got ahead
Right.
of time the topics we would be expecting you to discuss.
There we go. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was really helpful to not just practice like general interview tips, but to have kind of a list of things that I knew that I could talk about to be able to answer the kinds of questions that I kind of anticipated going in. So assuming they do the same thing this year, I would 100% recommend you take advantage of that. I know 72 hours isn't necessarily a lot of time, but whatever you can do to even just, in the mirror, like all the same practice tips that I'm sure everybody already knows anyway. But take advantage of all the tools in your toolbox to give your best self because I think that really makes a difference here.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, and as Emma alluded to, I think one of the features of our interview process, as we would hope this is a feature of like the entire application process, is that we try really hard to be transparent about what we're looking for. We are trying to make sure that we are a good fit for you as much as you are a good fit for us. And I think giving folks the ability to really prepare and to suss out whether this is the right opportunity for them um, is beneficial for the fellowship as much as it is beneficial to the applicant. Um, the other aspect of why we try to provide a lot of information is because we want to have everybody have equal opportunity to present their best self. Um, and that means that we're really setting everybody up for success, and giving everyone equal access to information about what our expectations are and how to present their best selves. There's a question in the Q&A. It's a great one. The question is, if you apply for the fellowship and are accepted, is it then guaranteed you will be placed somewhere as an internship? The answer is yes. We really work hard to make sure that you are placed in an internship opportunity that is right for you. And if you're selected for the fellowship, you will most definitely be guaranteed a placement in an internship. Um, Emma, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that placement process looked like.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I know that some people come into the Rappaport Fellowship with a really specific idea of where they're hoping to go. I came in, like I said, I have a background in health policy, and both Boston and Massachusetts are really on the forefront in that policy area. So I had probably a half dozen ideas of different state and local agencies that I could have been interested in working. But I was so thankful because Amanda had an even better idea. The Rappaport, I think, and Amanda in particular, are really tuned in to what the state and the city are doing, kind of in policy areas of interest. And so Amanda was able to say, hey, those are all some really great ideas, but I think I know something that might be even better. And she was totally right. So take full advantage. It's important to think, deeply about what your goals are for the program. And I think that, it's always better to communicate that, but keeping an open mind helped me have the best experience that I could have.
Um, Emma, that is a great lead into another question we have, which is like asking for some examples of health adjacent positions or health policy positions. So the ones that we were considering for Emma included a placement at the Attorney General's office in their healthcare division. Obviously, where Emma went, which was the Division of Insurance, we considered, I think, like House Ways and Means or one of the House or Senate committees that might be doing healthcare related policy and legislation. Obviously, EOHHS, which is the Executive Secretariat of Health and Human Services, that was another option. Um, Emma, was there anything else that we were considering?
There is, but I'm blanking on it right now. But I'll
I
find
think
it and I'll put it in the chat.
well, the city of Boston's
Yeah,
healthcare
public health, maybe.
public health commission,
Yeah,
right?
that sounds right.
So
Yep.
those are just some examples, and I invite uh, our applicants to really be to think creatively about where they might be placed. So, if you are, for example, excited about uh, the environment or climate justice, an easy place to go might be the state secretariat. But I love the fact that one of our fellows who was really excited about environmental work went instead to DPH, the Department to DPU, which is the Department of Public Utilities. So our fellows are, so if you are selected for the fellowship, we will work together to sort of co-create an opportunity that is right for you if you don't already have an internship in hand. And I also want to add that some folks do come with an internship in hand. They haven't said yes to it yet. They're considering multiple opportunities. And one of the things that we might do once you've been selected for the fellowship is to have a conversation about which amongst those opportunities might be right for you. And maybe we even create another option that you hadn't applied to or hadn't considered yet. So for instance, one of our fellows from this summer was really excited about criminal legal reform. She had already worked one summer for CPCS. And so I asked her if she would, and she had another offer in hand from CPCS for the summer. And I asked her whether she would consider instead thinking about the intersection of criminal legal policy and lots of other different areas of policy by going to the governor's legal counsel. And by going to GLOW over the course of the summer, she had a chance to see criminal legal reform done from the governor's perspective. She had an opportunity to see how those issues intersected with a variety of other secretariats. And she also had the opportunity to help with clemency and to make some recommendations for who should obtain clemency through the governor's team. And so she had this really holistic view of criminal legal reform that she wouldn't have been able to get if she had gone back to CPCS, which was the offer that she had in hand. One other question we have is if you didn't complete a master's program or some sort of postgraduate program, should you still include it in your resume? I think the answer is yes. Quite frankly, I didn't complete my PhD program, but it is still on my resume. And I just made clear that I did not graduate with the PhD in hand, but that I was in the PhD program for X amount of years. Emily, do you have something to add on that?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to build off of you talking about being in the governor's legal counsel. I just wanted to highlight how important it is to be able to work well with your co-fellows because my current internship, I am working on pardons, which is part of clemency. And so I was able to reach out to this co-fellow and ask her for advice, input about this pardon process. And first of all, she loved the experience. She loved her time there. But second, she was able to give me that insight that I was able to provide to the attorneys I was working with on this pardon, to assist with applying for this pardon. And so it really emphasizes this one networking process with not only attorneys but your co-fellows, and two, just building that relationship with one another. Because I mean, you're co-fellows, but you also end up being friends and like keeping in touch with one another and such.
Thanks, Emily. I think that is a really good instantiation of Jerry Rappaport's vision of like actually bringing people together and having that not only improve their careers, but really improve the policy making that they can do in their positions. So we're at the hour. I want to invite all of you to please be connected with the center. If you are able to join our newsletter, that is how we will be making the announcement of when our application is ready. We will also be sharing this PowerPoint with everybody who's registered for the webinar. And finally, Alexis and I, as well as all of our fellows, are always happy to be in conversation and to ask and to answer any questions you might have. So please feel free to contact us afterwards as well. Thank you again, Emily and Emma, for joining us today and lending us your expertise and your advice. And I want to thank all of the folks who joined us for this webinar. We hope it was useful, and we hope to see your name amongst the applicant pool when we look at the applications on January 15th. Have a really great night, everybody. Thank you.